They're now like the Pied Piper, and people are going to follow them and going to listen to them. And that A, instead of bringing doubt, is now going to become the workaholic. And that's exactly what happened with Paul. He went out and he preached, and people followed, and his influence grew.
Fascinating.
And he became the workaholic. But the U stays the same, so there's still a sense of humor there. And the L is, as you get older, you have more self-confidence when the L is toward the end of the name like that.
Let me ask you, can I give you another name?
Sure.
Barack Hussein Obama.
Well, I make a lot of people angry when I do this name, because somebody asked me that name before I had ever heard of him, before he was running for office. And the first thing I said was, this man is narcissistic. And he really cares about him and his agenda more than the agenda of everybody in the whole. Now, a lot of people would disagree with that, but that's what his name says. And I said, I don't want somebody who's narcissistic and thinking about them and theirs running a country when it's supposed to be ours.
That's right. You know, it's funny you say that, because I've said over the last number of years, when did it change from we the people to I the person?
Yeah, and I know a lot of people get upset with me and they go, "Oh, you're blasting him," and I go, "I'm just reading what the name says."
Well, I'm not faulting you for that. I applaud you for that.
You know, but I was very concerned. So then when I found out who he was, it was like a year before he ran for office. Somebody asked me his name, and I'm on record, and it's on the internet way back then. And then when he started doing different things, and I started watching, he's very competitive.
Yes.
And he needs a lot of alone time to resettle himself from within. He needs his reflection time. And I think that's very hard for him to get in his position. But it literally says in his name, for him to be stable and have appropriate thinking sequences, he needs his alone time to reflect. And I'm just not sure any president gets that.
What about Hillary Clinton?
Hillary's an interesting name because in her name it says that she can be the recipient or the perpetrator of violence. Now, you can interpret violence any way you want to.
Yeah.
But it also says she's going to fight for whatever she believes in, and she's never going to give up. She is a fighter. It says she has fairness issues, that she's fairly easy to like, that she considers everybody part of the family, and that relationships are very important to her. But, man, you better be loyal, because she'll go after you if you're not in her name. She's got quite a rebellious streak. Nobody tells her what to do.
So, having done the name analysis for Hillary Clinton, have you done an analysis on Bill, and are they compatible?
It's interesting. They have a lot of compatibility between the two of them, and they would make a lot of agreements. And in both of their names, they make a lot of back-end deals. I mean, they work better behind closed doors, and then they come out. So they're going to hash their stuff out behind closed doors, and who knows what goes on back there. And they have a lot in common. So the answer is yes.
Excellent.
They're a good couple for each other.
Yeah, I mean, just taking a sidebar here, I think it would be really advantageous to have two presidents in the White House, a sitting president and a former president. Man, can you imagine the amount of knowledge that would be at one spot at any given time?
What would really be cool is if we had three and we had one that was learning from the ones that were already in there, that was like the precursor. So then that one moves into the spot. The one that's retired and been there as the advisor moves out, and the one that just got through with his term moves to the advisor. So like 4 years early, and that one's getting trained before they just walk in and hello, it's yours.
A president in training.
Uh-huh.
Love the idea. Love the idea. Have you been asked by law enforcement to help with profiling?
Individual policemen have asked me, and those policemen, interesting enough, all work in Canada. I have not been asked by policemen that work in the United States.
Really? You know, I can understand that because having been in law enforcement myself, we're more open to the different possibilities of identifying suspects than would be the conventional aspects that American police officers use. I love our fellow American officers. They're a great bunch of people. But I guess every law enforcement agency in different countries have different ways of operating. So I know for a fact that we have used psychics. We have used dowsers. We have used mediums. Because whenever you're working on an investigation, when you get to a certain point, you need all the help you can get. And I think that the service that you offer is phenomenal.
Well, what's really interesting is on some lawyers, on some high profile cases, and then a lot of cases that aren't high profile, will ask me, is this person guilty or are they not? And it comes down to, are they capable with the qualities that are in their name to do such an act, or are they not capable because it's just not in them? And there was one high profile case, a name Casey, and they had said she killed her children.
Yes.
And I looked at that and I said, it's not in her name. It is in her name to act out of fear and cover for somebody else. And her father's name is the name that said he could have done the deed. And so, I listen to radio a lot, but I don't watch the news and I don't follow a newspaper. So, when sometimes names are presented, I have no idea what's going on because I'm not influenced by that. But when I looked at hers, and, for the jury, when they came back and said she wasn't guilty, and they were the ones that saw everything, and then they came back and tried to penalize her by having her pay for the stuff anyway,
right.
The court case. And I thought, that jury heard something, but the people were so angry at her because she had already been tried in the papers.
Yes.
But it wasn't in her name. She couldn't have done it. In her name, she's a rescuer. When you have rescuing in your name, you can't kill. They're diametrically opposed. So I just thought it was interesting that the last thing I'd heard on the case is that some people were starting to look at the dad.
Sharon, you and I have to take our news break. Please stand by. Very interesting topic. Exonation. www.knowthename.com is Sharon's website. Her book, Know the Name, Know the Person, is available. Where can people get your book?
Barnes & Nobles, Amazon, or my website, knowthename.com.
There you go.
We have it discounted on the website for your listeners.
All right, stand by, dear. We'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Don't go away. Hi, this is Rob McConnell, just letting you know that the X Chronicles newspaper is now available online at www.xzonebookclub.com. All past editions and current editions of the X Chronicles newspaper are available for 99 cents. That's www.xzonebookclub.com, and that's 99 cents U.S. per edition. And don't forget, the X Zone store is now open as well for all of your X Zone Nation merchandise. www.thexzonestore.com.
Do you have a dis-ease that you would like to alleviate through a natural means? Have you been contacted by angels, ghosts, or even extraterrestrials and want to validate these experiences? Or would you simply like to speak with someone who can help you find your life's purpose? I'm Dr. Joseph Mara, and I'm offering my services free of charge for first-time clients contacting me during the month of April. These free consultations include angel card readings, guided meditations, life coaching, and energy healing. If you have always wanted to explore these types of experiences but were skeptical or simply could not afford them, then take advantage of this free special offer. Contact me through my website, aguidinglight, spelled LITE.com, to schedule your consultation today. Until then, I offer you love, light, and laughter.
www.knowthename.com. My guest this hour is the author of Know the Name, Know the Person, and that is Sharon Lynn Wyeth. And first of all, Sharon, thanks very much for joining us. A great pleasure having you with us. And your uncanny ability to decode a person's name and actually come up with a profile of them is just astounding. And all I can say is, wow.
Well, when people read the book, they
Hmm.
can too. And then I've trained people and they can do it just as well as I can. So it's very learnable.
Let me ask you something. What happens to a person who is adopted? Their birth name is changed usually by the adopted parents. How does this work into the equation?
Well, it depends on what country you're adopted in, because in some countries they have to keep with their first name,
Hmm.
which is the essence of who they are, but the adopted family is allowed to change the middle name. And then of course you change the last name because that is your influence. And once you've been adopted, then where you live and who's influencing you definitely has changed. Just when a lady gets married and she changes her last name, she's really saying, I'm changing my environment and who's influencing me. So I look at it as I always hope they can keep that first name because that's so truly their essence. If not, what I have found is they have these characteristics that sometimes will bleed through from that
Hmm.
first name, even though they're being shown and taught how to exhibit the qualities and characteristics in the new name that they've been given.
What happens when someone changes their name?
It takes 7 years. It's like the hourglass of time, and they slowly merge into the new name. Now, what I have found that I think is fascinating is a lot of people will call me up and say, I don't like this name and it's because of da da da, whatever. So I want this name. And I'm looking at the names going, there's two or three ways to get every quality or characteristic, and you've picked another name with the exact same qualities and characteristics. They're just exhibited a little differently. So I kind of laugh and I say it's kind of like saying, do you want to fly in from the west or you want to fly in from the east?
Exactly. During the commercial break, you and I were talking, and you were saying that you also get requests from people who are dating or planning to date, and they're submitting names to you to see if they're compatible.
Yes, and on Match.com, I have a whole article that's totally written on things to look for. Do you want sex? Do you not want sex?
Hmm.
Here's how you find it in a name. I mean, all kinds of things that you might think about and say, is this important to me or not important? And where am I looking in the name for that?
All right, I have to ask you because you piqued my interest, and I'm a guy. What do you look for in a name to find out if you're going to get sex or not?
You look at where the ER combinations are, where the U's are, and where the singleton E's are. Because the ER,
Yeah.
depending on where it's placed in the name, first, middle, or last, or whether you have it in both, will really say how they feel about sex. So you've got to look at then the letters around that ER combination. But the ER combination, maybe sex should have been spelled SER. I don't know. But it's that ER combination that gives you that the propensity. And when it comes in the last name, it usually means that someone either has been taught something funny, or those often are kids that were played with or touched inappropriately as kids, or
Oh.
they were taught that sex was bad and you better abstain. But they were taught some type of an extreme thought about sex. When it comes in the first or the middle name, often it means that person will start sexual curiosity early. I always tell parents, by third grade, you want to have them well educated because you don't know. And so get them educated. And then if it comes in both the first or the middle and the last, those people usually have an insatiable appetite. Usually, not always. You got to look at the other letters around them.
When you're doing a name analysis, what would just hold up big red flags? Has there ever been a time when you've been asked to do an analysis of a name and it's just thrown you for a loop?
Sometimes it's very hard if you're in a public setting to say something positive or how you're going to word it. For an example, we were doing a fundraiser for a high school in Washington State, and it was a really cool fundraiser, so I volunteered my time. And they would come up in groups, and they would all hand me their names on a card. And I would look at them and then sort them how I wanted to read them. And one person came up, since we were just talking about the ER, one person came up in this group, and I read him last, and I looked at him, and I said, your name says that you're really into touch. And all the boys laughed because they all knew what I meant by touch, because he had ERs everywhere in his name and repeated in his name. And I said, the best thing I can tell you about your name is that you came to learn to think about how somebody else would think or